Hey everyone, my name is Eric. I'm a software engineer. Been doing this for 14 years. Been in Angular, been doing stuff with Angular for 6 or 7 years, and I'm pretty excited about what we've been working on recently here. Um, we've been working on this component context next, which is a helper that for Angular tests when you have a component that you want to test with in Jasmine. Um, this is the next evolution. We had the component context previously. Um, and I was finding it awkward to use. And so we're developing a new version. It's unfortunately a breaking change, and so I'm going to have to release it as a separate helper and deprecate this one, and we'll migrate users over to this one. In another major patch release, major release, not a patch release. With Angular 12 or maybe even 13, we'll actually get rid of this one and probably rename this. Um, I'll have to decide if we want to stick with the word next on the end there, or come up with a new name for this, so that because if I leave the word next, then when I get rid of component context, we'll have to rename this one, and people will have yet another migration. Not a hard one. Anyway, um, plan for today is to first of all finish up any to-dos. Gonna probably have to revisit the docs and make sure those are all solid for the new version of the component context. Um, I guess we will have to pick a name today because I would like to get this releasable, get it merged into the master branch. Um, and then maybe just have fun going through any of the other tests in this mono repo, this whole repo, that are currently using the old one and switch them over. And just, I guess that'll give us a couple of things. That'll give us, first of all, the joy of reducing boilerplate in all of those other tests. Um, and also just try to surface any problems or missing features before I actually release a new version and get users on it. So, gosh, let me just one more introductory thing to show you sort of where this all came from. If you haven't been keeping, if you're just joining. Um, so I was writing some tests for one of these other libraries in this repo, and it was this long, and it was really just half of that was actually my test code. The rest was all boilerplate, all this, and so we have managed to reduce it down to this, which is much more succinct, and it's almost all. It's either the actual code required to do the test or boilerplate for the this directive superclass, which is what it's testing. Boilerplate for that instead of boilerplate for the testing framework. And so that's we've gotten it out of the way. It was feeling like the test context, the helper was in the way instead of being as helpful. So, um, good. Let's dive in. Um, I guess first thing I'm going to do is just find these to-dos, and I'm going to have to search a little harder than I'm used to because I'm trying out the dark theme in the editor, and I'm not as used to this color scheme yet. But I think this is a new feature I have in mind for this component context, something we can add to this that was not previously even possible. And I think I'm going to delay that. I'm going to try and get this into master first and do that as a feature release later, an upgrade. So where's my sort of repo level to do? Let me just move this over to here, which is sometimes in sort of priority order, but not really. I feel like I'll maybe put it here. So in set width, height, and maybe border for the wrapper component in component context next. Okay, so that was easy. Done with that one for now. I know there was something down here. This just makes me Makes me want to give up coding if I leave code like this laying around. So let's see if we can make this at least a bit prettier. It's hacky, like in terms of the functionality, but at least we can make it look okay. So we want to, this is a function that gets the inputs for you pass it a component class and it inspects all the annotations you added to the properties to find all the inputs. Oh, you know what? And I just realized we should write another test for that, because I haven't tried it on like a setter, an input for a setter. Let's see. Can handle view child in tricky ways, so maybe like in here, it picks up inputs. Oh, hold on. It picks up inputs that are setters. That'll be good enough. So we'll come back to that in a minute. Oh, you know what? I could probably even make this a part of my template. No, normally I've declared the context in a before each. When I'm not writing a test for the context itself, I'm usually reusing the same one for all my tests. Okay. New component context. Next. This is going to be, we'll just start with the test component, and we'll have to adjust that later, but just to get rid of the compilation error. Make this hack at least look less ugly. What? Sorry, distracted. There we go. So this is like, maybe I can just pull out some variables instead of nesting everything, and that'll at least be a start. Maybe. Can I even do that? Yeah, we could make this one so input decorators. So we've filtered it down to just the input decorators. Oh, look, it's already so much better. And then we map that to there. Oh, you know what? Let's and we can get rid of this whole special case too, and that'll help tighten this up a bit. All right, so let's wow! When you're in the dark theme and you come to this, that is startling. Can I set color scheme has changed? Reload DevTools. Okay. Okay, that helps. I switched to dark theme for if I'm on my phone and stuff, when I'm checking it from bed in the middle of the night, it doesn't blast my eyes as much. So I don't know. It's an experiment. Okay, so the only failing one is the one I just wrote, which is great. And then if I comment this out, I think I should get a failing test right now. If not, we'll have to... Oh, it doesn't even compile. So when there's no property decorators, we should have plenty of tests that do that. Oh, or do we? What I want to do is handle this, make sure we've got this case well tested before I go refactoring it. Excuse me. Sneeze. I was quick on the mute button. You're welcome. I feel like we have plenty of tests probably that are exercised, that are using this with a component that doesn't have inputs. But at the same time, that's sort of coincidence. And so maybe I want to write a special test for that and get that test working. And then refactor. Red, green, refactor. First write your failing test. and then turn it green, which we'll have to pretend for that part, and then refactor. Okay, so it can handle components that don't have inputs. And so we're going to make a component in our test called no input component. And that doesn't need to be very complicated, does it? There, it has no inputs. So we'll need a selector. That is boilerplate for the test, unfortunately. No input. And the template to make it a component, which is blank. Oh, thanks for telling me I had a typo, WebStorm. And then context is a new component context. Next, for the no input component. And then I guess all we're going to need is to show that expect just running anything. We don't actually have to do anything in the test. So the test normally lives inside this callback, but we don't need it to do anything. We just need it to initialize the component. Oh, and you know what? This is not really part of the constructor. So, oh no, yeah, this is, yeah, we're testing the constructor. We don't want this to throw any kind of error. Okay, yep. All right, so this should certainly pass right now, I would hope. There we go. Okay. Yup. And how do we get a failing case for this? Let's somehow just like, I don't know, make this any or something. So that should throw an error. We should get 2 failing tests now. Good. Oh yeah, and then we're going to want to do this whole thing in here. I suppose we could inline that. Oops. Okay, so now when we run this, we should get a meaningful error message. Expected function not to throw an error, but it did. So the error was in here. Good. So now we can fix it, I think, by just doing this. Oh, well, get rid of that, put that back. I think if we just do that, map should take care of all that for us. Yeah. Okay, this is good enough. I don't, feel bad about myself when I look at it anymore. And what's the deal with this get own? I was copying this get own property descriptor from, examples in, I don't know, Stack Overflow or something. And it feels unnecessary. Like, shouldn't we be able to, I don't know, just do component type here directly? Let me just do this temporarily and see if it works. No, that certainly does not work. Okay. Interesting. I want to learn about this. What is this doing? Get own property descriptor. Why is that different? Get own property descriptor. Improve my JavaScript knowledge here. Returns an object descriptor, blah, 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 blah. Uh-huh. Oh, I just realized that was a bad test I just did. Hold on, because we don't get the value of it anymore. We get the prop decorators. Normally, to get the value of prop decorators, you just do that. All right, now let's try our test. Yeah, we're making this more succinct all the time. I'm not sure what was going on with that get property descriptor. Is that just a way to satisfy the typing? Why did the examples that I found use that? See if I can find them again. This is for Angular get input, get annotations. I think this is probably it. With the new version of Angular, you should use reflective object. Why? Why should I use it? Read Jeff Fairley's answers below on what to do with the data after that. Okay, he just claims that we should use it, but why should we use it? I don't understand. This is sort of what we're doing now instead of the this guy. Why use it? Well, it's hard. I'm finding it hard to learn. Okay, maybe if I read through this, maybe like, yeah, this provides the right context. You can see, however, it depends on the implementation. Oh. Depends on the implementation of that function. If something gets added to the prototype of the class, types do things differently. They use decorate and metadata functions, which are generated by the TypeScript compiler. The data gets added with defined property function. The package responsible for this is reflect. Object, okay, fine. Defined metadata is used to set the annotations, and to obtain them, the obvious reflect.get metadata. To get the annotations, you have to use this, and this, and this. Huh. Well. Oh, maybe the difference is it's the set own thing. It's the get own. Right. So if our class, I wonder if like a superclass had an input, then we would want to have it. So actually, no, that's get own might be even a bad thing. Okay. He says this is what you should use, but he doesn't really tell us why. This is working. It's more succinct. I'm going to leave it. And I've got tests to tell me if that ever goes wrong. Cool. So that was that to do. Are there any other to-dos in this file? Documentation. Yep. And test the typing. Okay. That's a good idea. I'm gonna get on that. What is this underline? Oh, I don't do that. No. Disable. Okay. Um, I could see myself getting into that, marking everything read-only if I don't happen to ever want to update it. But I'm not in the habit, and I don't feel very compelled. Test the typing. That's a great idea. So when working on a library, we want to make sure not only that it behaves well, but all the typing works really well for our users, and we don't have any regressions and all of that either. So let's get a typing test going. This will be the component context next. What do I call this? DTS spec. And so we want to show that when you, let's declare a class called test component. And then if we do a ctx equals new test component, no, component context next for the test component, then we will expect the type to be component fixture unknown for ctx dot fixture. Oh, let's see if that works. This is DTS-lint. So if you're not familiar with DTS-lint, it doesn't run the code. It simply does static analysis. And whenever you put one of these expect type things, the line below it, it will figure out the type of the expression on the line below it. And if it matches this, it passes, and if it doesn't, it fails. So this is a way to have basically regression tests for your typing itself. I do not remember having this problem with DTS-lint before. Experimental decorator support. Set experimental decorators option in your tsconfig. Well, okay, we can do that. tsconfig. All right. Oh, what, shall we alphabetize this? Or no, maybe what I did was put it in the same order as like the Angular scaffolded tsconfig, but only with the parts I wanted. Where are you, tsconfig? So experimental decorator is above lib. I don't know why I have that. Maybe this is not. Well, whatever. Experimental decorators, true. All right, now run DTS-lint. Okay. And just to make sure that the test is actually doing something, let's see it fail. You know, if I don't know, remembered this wrong or something. Yeah, there we go. So we expected the type to be this, but we got that, which is not a match, of course. And is there any other typing we should do here? Yeah, you know, I want to show that when you construct this, it just infers the correct typing for everything based on the component you pass to the constructor, because that's an awesome, in my opinion, super awesome new feature of this component context next compared to the old one. You had to declare, you know, we would have had to do something like this. And then there were some other things in there, like you had to repeat things more. So let's even expect the type of this to be component context next for a test component. Oh, you know, that maybe I don't want to test these, but I do want to test that it, where we're using this, that it's like here, the inputs are of the correct type and the component instance is of the correct type. I don't think I want to have a regression test for how I want to be free to rearrange this. I want users to have to never think about all that. Although I suppose they will. That's interesting. I suppose they will if they want to define their own subclass of inits they can pass in. That's going to come up when we go through, hopefully, when we go through updating all the existing tests from all the repos. We're going to come into situations where I assume we make a subclass of this that has its own special init things going on. Yeah. Okay. So I want to test that when we call update inputs, it uses the type from test component. So that would be something like ctx.update inputs, and here we will expect type partial of test component. Maybe. No, that's not where it's not the type it's going to report. How can we? Oh, maybe we can just do yeah, we can just test. Oops, test it this way. So this is going to be a function which takes a partial of test component. That's the relevant part, and returns void. So if it infers this correctly, oops, it should infer correctly that that's a test component partial, not, I don't know, any or some random other thing. Oh, right. I guess I don't need that word declare there. That doesn't save me anything. Okay. Good. And where else do we use this type that we care about? We inferred it from there. We're using it here. Get component instance. Test component is and this isn't a protected thing. We don't care about that. Okay, cool. So that tests all the typing inferred from the component. What about the typing of this init? Where do we use that? Oh, from the superclass. Um, init options. It's that you can pass in. That's. How do we test that with this overloaded method signature? I'm curious. Let's just see what it looks like first of all. So, if we construct this guy, initted ctx equals new component context next, and we say that when we run init, we're going to allow these whatever. Or let's see, a type custom init. Extends one of these guys for, what is it, test component? We'll have to import this. And we'll add a special property like, oh, I don't know, special property, which is a string. And then we want to be able to specify that here, right? And then see that it infers this type down in all the right places, or carries it through, not infer, which means I think I want to swap those around. Oh, I can't because, oh wait, maybe I can. Hold on. Yeah, we can't reference. So unfortunately, if someone wants to have a custom init options, let me rename that. Keep the same name as the superclass. Don't have the same thing named two different things in two different places. Be consistent. That's one of my philosophies. So unfortunately, when specifying that, they're going to have to type all that out. That's too bad. I wonder if there's a way to make that better for people. Let me at least get the test working and then maybe come back and think about refactoring. So we're going to expect the type of, let's see, we're seeing where this init options is carried through, and that's right. That's where we said it was from the superclass when in this run method. Right. So what does this even look like? What type do we end up with? You can do it. An object? Oh, I've never seen that syntax before. So it keeps track of both possible method signatures by putting it in an object with two different, I forgot what those are called, but like an object that can be called, you can write that way in an interface. That's really cool. And the part that we really care about is this custom init. And I don't really know a way to drill down to that with this particular testing tool. So I feel fine with that. Let's just use it, because it shows that custom init carries through to the signature of the run method, which is what we really cared about here. Cool. So we tested our typing. I think that was it. That was every place that both of these was used. I'm happy. And that was the last to do in this file other than update the documentation. So I guess we should make sure this passes. Let's commit that. That's a nice isolated piece of work, updating. Well, or at least it was a little bit miscellaneous, but at least updating the documentation should be. Anyway, I feel like committing. Sure. So this is really like address miscellaneous to-dos. And unfortunately, I don't have a nice theme to write in my commit message. It wasn't well planned or like structured. All well. Okay, so we're narrowing in on steps needed to actually get to a release. And documentation, should I do documentation now? Or would it make more sense to go try and start using it in a bunch of places to see if there are more changes that need to happen? I feel like that might make sense. Because otherwise, if I make changes and it's going to affect the documentation, I have to remember to update everything there too. So let's, wow, okay. Let's just start using it. Let's start converting tests that are currently using the old component context to instead use the new component context next. Maybe now, okay, maybe the true next step is to really put thought into this name before we go propagating it throughout the entire repo. We have these test context objects, so it should have context in the name. The Angular context is the sort of root level, and then you can test anything Angular there, but if you're testing a component, you can use the component context, and it gives you extra, all kinds of extra help now that we've made it fancier to make that easier for you. Gosh, I feel like it's just the right name. I feel like we're going to have to go the path of deprecating this one, encouraging people to start migrating to this component context next, and then maybe with Angular 12, when we do our next major version release, get rid of this and have everyone rename to this. Or maybe we'll wait one more version, but anyway, sometime in the future. They'll have to just go, it should be a simple global search replace for this string and replacing it with, we could make our own schematic for it, but I haven't quite gotten that fancy yet. So we'll stick with that name and just start finding. Let's see, let's start with things in ngDev itself that uses component context. And we want to find where that's the whole word so that it does not match component context next. And, ooh, that doesn't really show up. There's a way I can get rid of this sidebar so you guys can, there it is. There we go. Oh, right, because this is too small. I haven't opened this window apparently when live streaming yet. Bam. Right, so the spec for component context obviously has to keep using it, and the file itself does. But the rest of them should be able to switch over. So we should be able to simplify our tests by first of all getting rid of this, because the only thing that did for us was what we can now simply pass in. So this is now a component context for test component, and we can, oh, component context next, that was the whole point. Let me put that in my clipboard. We're going to be typing that a lot. And here it's the test component. All right, so then those tests should still be passing. Oh, there's something we didn't get back around to updating yet. That's okay. Oh, you know, I might as well go add that to my miscellaneous commit. Let me go back and do that now. That was in here, I assume. Yeah. Picks up inputs that are setters. Oh, yeah. Right. So we need to make a new component. This will be the setter input component. Has an input which is a set for, well, what shall we call it? Name, some name. I don't know, setter input. And that is a string. And let's see. And we'll just set it. This dot received value is value. And then to test that this actually works, what do? We're going to pass it here. Setter input is sent value. And we're getting into trouble already with the typing. This is good that we're checking this out, testing it. Okay. Let's just ignore the typing for a minute and see if the input gets in there. So if expect get component instance dot received value. Oh. Okay, hold on. Of course the typing was wrong here. I still think it will be, but let's be sure. Yeah, it says we'll come back to that. There we go. At least we have that part of the typing figured out now. To be sent value. So does this even work? No. All right. All right. We've got work to do there. That's going to be a problem. First, let's see what the template, what this get inputs returns, which we can tell by checking out this template. So that's in component context. Next, line 130 something. Let's see what the template looks like. Yeah, no inputs. So we just didn't find that input, which is exactly why we wrote this test. Red, green, refactor. So now we have a failing test, and we need to figure out why this get inputs does not find that input. And maybe it's because it's not a property decorator. Maybe it's some other kind of decorator. Let's go find this again in the Angular source code and see if there's something else that jumps out at us that we could use to find, what would that be, like method decorators or something instead of property decorators. That was called prop decorators. Constructor parameters, prop decorators. Reflection capabilities, that sounds like what we want. Prop decorators. Own prop metadata. We have prop metadata and prop decorators. We may just need to dig into the object ourselves in the console and explore that way. Nothing's jumping out at me, and maybe it's in this metadata. So that would be stopping. Oh, we could stop at our same breakpoint, I suppose, because we just want to inspect component type. Oh, we got rid of our breakpoint. Okay, fine. So the component type. How do we get that to print out in a way we can inspect more easily? There we go. We have prop decorators. Oh, there is an input prop decorator. Oh, because this is probably, yeah, we're not running our specific test. Let's run the specific test. And set a breakpoint here again. Okay. So we do still have this. And it is an input. But it's, our function isn't finding it? What do we return? Oh, it is there. What? What, did I get the breakpoint wrong before? Oh my gosh, wild goose chase. I'm sorry. Lesson. Make sure you're running just the specific test that you're trying to figure out. Template's looking good. So what's wrong? Why is the test failing? The template was looking good, but we're still not getting the value in there. That's surprising. Let's set a breakpoint. Run line 120. Yeah. Let's set a breakpoint. It's supposed to be setting that on the outer component. In it. Here. Takes our inputs, sets them on the wrapper component, and then detect changes should cause the template binding to propagate that through to our setter here. So it looks like this setter is just never being called, but we're expecting it to be called from init here. Don't need that one anymore. So the component instance, oh my gosh. Oh, hate it when I'm my own worst enemy. I cast this to any because I was having typing problems. And I didn't get the benefit of, this is why typing is so great. This needs to be inputs. Error, oh, I've got something formatted wrong. There we go. Oh my gosh, and now I don't have to cast it. How did it know? It knows it's a setter and I can, oh wow, TypeScript. Bravo. Bravo. I thought for sure because this was a function, I wasn't going to be able to do this and satisfy the same interface. Because what I have to pass in here is a partial of this. But gosh, sure enough, TypeScript just lets me do that. Wow. That's cool. And now do we have a running a passing test? Yeah, the input is being called now because I'm actually sending the value correctly. Okay. Wow. Don't you hate it when, you know, all the struggles are just some stupid mistake that you made and should have caught, and you're like, don't tell me what to do, TypeScript. I'm going to get to that later. I'm going to fix that typing later. But then the very thing TypeScript was telling me was the exact problem that I just spent the last half an hour trying. No, it wasn't that long. 20 minutes, though, maybe, trying to fix myself. Wow. Okay, no, that makes me really happy. So we didn't have to do anything. This already worked. I just had to get my test right. And so we can definitely just, oh, that is, I'm super happy about that. So I'm going to add that to my miscellaneous changes and then come back, amend the commit, and then come back to what we were doing going to start, which is updating a bunch of tests to use our new version of the thing to, one, make them nicer, more succinct, and two, make sure we're fully thinking about all the different use cases that this needs to handle. All right, so we already switched this one over to the version 2, and all the tests are still working. So that's great. The question in my mind now, that was the only place the old name showed up in this file. My question now is whether we need this wrapper, because a new feature of this version 2 is that it has a built-in wrapper. And so if we were only using this Oh, wrapper harness. Oh, now wait a minute. What did I get rid of? Wrapper harness. Oh no, this is not a wrapper component. This is a test harness. Okay. So no, there's nothing built in here to replace that. So I guess we're good to go. Cool. Love it. Oh yeah, we obviously still need to export the old one so that people can import it. Nothing we can do to change that. Test call spec. This we should be able to improve, I assume. Yeah, nothing fancy going on in this subclass, and we don't need to make subclasses anymore. That's a feature of the new version. So instead, here we can do component context next and pass in the test component. Oh, and of course we'll need to import it. So we just have a new way to get the component instance. And again, the same thing here. So no big improvement in this particular test. We're going to end up with, what did we end up with? Just saving 4 lines. But it covered all of our use cases. So it's not a loss. Not a big win, but not a loss. Let's update that documentation to switch over to the new one. This we're going to hit. This is at the bottom of our test for our new, version 2. Hey, why didn't it open there? Down at the bottom of the test here. When we go update documentation, we'll completely rewrite, well, tweak that in all kinds of different ways. Component context itself, of course, can't use the new version. Okay, I guess that was it in this particular library. So let's build this thing so that we can have it available to all of our other libraries in the repo and continue using the new hotness, or at least the new goodness. What was that yellow I saw? No name was provided for JS Core. Guessing JS Core. I feel like I might need to address that. Wow, the new dark theme actually does something for me. I'm going to leave that in my to-do at the top. Oh, I copied twice? Oh no, there's 2 of them. Okay, that's fine. 2 lines. Okay, so that built, and now we can do a search through all the projects for component context. And how do I Control X? Oh, that's more annoying. Okay, I'll just collapse them. Component context itself, directive superclass spec. Okay, so here we actually have a component context that had to be a subclass anyway. And this will be the first time converting one of these. So that's fun. Let's see if it does anything for us. Component context, next. And so instead of declaring it there, we pass it in to the super constructor. And we no longer have to include it here. That will be taken care of for us automatically. Okay. Just a little tweak. And I guess that's it. All right. So in a way, that makes me feel good that the old version of this wasn't really so bad for, what is a fairly common use case where you're actually making a subclass for some other reason, or the ones we were doing earlier where you're only doing that boilerplate once at the top of your test and reusing it through the rest. But gosh, it sure was a pain when you had to repeat it in every single test. So it's a big improvement for really simple tests, little one-off tests, and just an adjustment for these. Although we can start adding more features on top of it because it has the wrapper component built in. It does actually have some better features. It's going to call ng on changes for your component more realistically than if than the way that at least I was naturally doing it before. And we're going to be able to add those decorations and make it sort of give you some more controls to, for example, have a fixed size wrapper container to render your test inside of in case that's relevant for your component, which is, when I write a progressive web app and I want to have it be sort of like full screen and have just scrolling on the side, I want my app component to just fill the viewport or fill its parent container. And I can do that with having that wrapper have a set size, and I can actually see that that's working properly. So I won't have to write my own wrapper for those tests anymore. I'll be able to again remove some boilerplate or at least some repeated code in multiple places into this nice handy package. I'm just justifying this work out loud. No one asked. No one's like, was that really worth it? But I'm still like answering that voice inside my head or something. I don't know. Okay, back to business. Ooh, here's a case where we don't need this at all anymore. That didn't do anything fancy. Oops. And that's going to be their wrapper component. Now this one, I think is actually significant for this to. I don't think we can eliminate this because the whole point is, I just remember this test off the top of my head. The whole point is to have this where it does not list these inputs in the wrapper, right? Even if no inputs are provided to the component. So that's what we're doing here. We didn't do, if we use our built-in wrapper, we're going to have my input equals whatever, and then that is going to be provided to the component, and that's not the point of this test. And let's see, this is the ng core. I want to see if this still passes. Ooh. Good thing we made that have a nice, clear error message. Right. That's a little bit of new boilerplate. So directive superclass, one of these ones we just did here, that has a selector, that has a selector. Oh wait, directive superclass, sorry. Yeah, we need a selector here. S test. Directive superclass, get input emits. Okay. I think, okay, I have a theory for what's going on here. Let's run just that test. And I bet if we don't initialize this, how do you... Oh, that's just tslen. Okay, so we will still compile. Yeah. So I worked on this file recently, which is how I knew what to do so quickly. The problem here is that I originally wrote this spec with like this, all these test components up here that are continually reused throughout all of the tests down here, and they all have this one repeated or common context. And then I came in, I wanted to add some more tests recently. I'm like, well, I don't want to go understand everything that's going on here and add more to this mess so that I can test the new things I need to cover. And so I just made, like here, I made my own directly in that specific test, which makes a lot more sense to me. I think that's a lesson learned. It's sort of I'm realizing it's an anti-pattern to make a big complicated test setup up here that's going to cover all of your use cases. It's better to do small targeted components in each test. So the problem was I have this called stest, and then it must be down here in one of these other ones. I have another one also called, there it is, stest. And because I actually constructed this, it's tried to set it up in testbed so that Angular was ready to render stest. And then here we did it again, and we told Angular, oh, also be able to do this one called stest, and then that's when we got the error message. So the right way to do this is to start I believe the right thing to do here is to start moving more toward each test being independent of the others. So that would mean something like, basically, I think just remove that. Oh, and I'm using it in all of these. I was about to go, just paste it in here. Do something like that. Oh. For each test, and that would be just a step in the right direction. But now it feels worse because I have to deal with this. I guess I could use WebStorm. I could pass in CTX to this and let WebStorm, let's change the method signature by adding a parameter called CTX, which is a component context next, or I guess in this case it's specifically a test context, right? Isn't that what we then one of these default parameter value in the call, one of these is going to allow me to have WebStorm automatically put the string CTX everywhere this is called. I don't know, let's just put it in both and see what happens. Or no, let's just experiment, let's learn. So let's put it, oh. Let's put it there. Ah, that added it there. That's not what I wanted. Oh, and test component context is what I want. Okay, undo. Yes. And now I think we are ready. So something called CTX, which is one of, do I have to click in there? Oh, that's a little bit annoying. And here, let's pass in CTX. And I think any place this is called, yes, it's now passing it in. So we can do the same thing again for all of these. And oops. And I think that'll be all right for us. Oh, how do I get in there? Okay, there we go. F2 worked. Tab F2 paste, tab F2 CTX, enter. Alt insert? Oh, that's not a very convenient keyboard shortcut. Better to reach for the mouse than that. Okay, so then we just need to copy this into the rest of the places, and hopefully we'll get ourselves back to a, oops, didn't need all that. A more functional state. And we have one problem here. Oh, we haven't changed this one yet. Okay. Test component context. Oh, that's what it was called. Yeah. Ah, and we still have one thing that we converted that doesn't have a selector, and that's in emits even if no inputs are provided. Even if no inputs are provided, we... Oh, right. So let's just convert this to a component. It didn't actually need to be a directive. Oops. So then... and let's give this a more specific name because I'm going to get clashes otherwise. Like, let's call it no inputs. The S no input component. No input component. And here then we actually use our new selector. S no input. Oh, and then because it's a component, now we need a template. Emits even if no inputs are provided. Isn't that what we just did? Even if. Oh, all of that work, and this was the one that needed it. So we didn't actually have to change this one, but whatever, I'll leave it. It's fine. I wrote the word component here, so might as well actually use a component here. Ay, ay, ay. Now what's going on? Cannot read property injector of null, and are you going to give us a nice line number? slibs ngdev, that's... Okay, let's start playing guess and check. Let's run just this test and dig in to find what line that is coming from in our test itself. So this is the directive superclass spec. Oh, I have that up already. Good. And we're on line 230-ish, which is just down here. And let's see where we end up hitting that. I assume it's probably going to be inside when we call run, but let's find out. Oh, S no input is not a known element. We put it there. We have to, we have to, okay. Ooh, it hid that error message. So here's a case. This is why we go try and use it before we just ship it off to users. I had to do so much digging to figure out what was going on there because somehow it apparently swallowed this error message. Why did this just print out? We get cannot read injector of null, and we'd have to go find this one. I want this to be the error that shows up here. Log unknown element error. Maybe that's not possible. Maybe Angular doesn't throw it. Maybe Angular just directly prints it to the console. It's in a log function. Oh, that's too bad. That's too bad. How could I maybe try to detect it then? Is there some way I can help my users identify this problem more quickly? I guess I should... Let's see, that happened... When exactly did that happen? I still want to know which line it was on. It wasn't there. It wasn't in run. Oh no, I can't help my users because that's not even coming from the library code. That's coming straight from this test. Oh, and now I actually have a nice... Here, the stack trace is useless, but here, if I would have looked there, it would have been obvious. Well, it would have been a little easier to find. Cannot read... this injector. Oh, so it didn't find this. And so injector, of course. That's curious. Why would this not be able to find... let's set a breakpoint and see Let's see if this is even rendering right. Inner component, and just see if we don't see that string on the screen. Aha! Oh, we see an angle bracket. Did I have just a mistake? Aha, okay. Has no input, has no input. Right. So now we have that. Okay, now it's all coming together. It's not on the screen because it's not a known element, and therefore it cannot be found. And that's because we need to declare it as we're setting things up. We made this, we told the context about the wrapper, but we haven't yet told it that this is even a thing. So we need to declare that no input component is something that the test framework needs to compile and have ready for us to use. There we go. And we don't need this in the template anymore. And what did I do? I missed something as I was, when I deleted this and being all happy about the fact that we could simplify, I missed this one, which we still needed. It no longer has to be a separate subclass, but we do still have to pass that extra inner component into be initialized. Okay, lovely. And let's get back to our so we actually, oh, not that many, not that many. And learning lessons as we go. I'm thinking, hoping that these should start going faster. I'm going to take a quick break here, and I will be back soon. All right, we're back. Thanks for sticking around. Right. So we are just simply chugging along now. We fixed all the problems we had encountered so far. Time to move on. We finished up that file, so we can just move on to this one. So what we really want is for this to be a component context next. And then, we only want to do that if it matches the whole word. Whoa. Oh, there were only 2 of them. And let's see, I don't think we need this to be a superclass, a subclass. We can just use it directly here and then pass a similar thing straight to the constructor of this guy. So that would be test component, and then all of this where we don't need to pass this in here anymore. Cool. And then we're going to have to update, let's see, this we just renamed to be a little bit better with inputs plural. And then these guys just have a different way to access it. Oh, object is of type unknown. Oh, because we have to specify here that it's a test component. Okay. And we are in ng core. Is that the one that we have running? Yeah, so we can see if our tests still work. We got that same problem. That's a gotcha when doing this transition. The test component now needs to have a selector. I should write a migration guide. Ooh, that's interesting. I am interested to dig into these problems. Where should I write a migration guide? Let's just start by keeping notes in to-do. Write migration guide from component context to component context next. Oops. And in it, we need to make sure we remember to tell users ensure the component passed in has a selector. Okay. That's interesting. Or we could try auto adding one. That might be an interesting feature to add instead of forcing users. Wow, that's a thought. If the user did not give their component a selector, would it be helpful or possibly like just dangerous if we could even figure out how to force it to have one? We'd be essentially mutating the component they passed us, the component class. That doesn't seem so nice. Oh, maybe we could do some kind of override. Testbed.override their testbed dot override component set the a component, test component, set the selector. Huh. So we wouldn't have to mutate their component they pass in at all. Wow, that's interesting. We could call it like component under test or something like that. I wonder if that's what testbed does. Maybe that's mimicking what the testbed framework already does, because I think if you just, don't use all my fancy wrappers, but just use testbed directly to create your component, and it does not have a selector, it will give it some name, like it puts an element in the DOM, and it has to give it a tag name. I like this. I like this. See, using a feature before you release it is, see, yeah. And we could even just ignore whatever selector they pass in. We could remove all requirements having to do with the selector. Or if we want to, I think Angular's testbed does. If you provide a selector, it will... Oh yeah, that could be important. If you provide a selector, it will use that in the DOM, which would be important if you're doing a component harness from the CDK. Because then the harness will probably be searching in the DOM for an element by that name. But if you don't have one, or if it's like illegal, I'm loving this actually. I'm loving this. So I suppose that means I should stop what I'm doing and go do that so that we don't have to keep adding selectors to all of these old tests, or all, not old, but all of these other tests throughout the repo. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm convinced. It feels a little strange to like be in the middle of something and just like abandon it and go do something else that's going to take a while, but it doesn't make sense to continue adding these everywhere. If depends on how many are left. Maybe I will, and then I'll go back and remove them again. No, because then I won't know which ones I have to hunt for all the ones I should remove. Okay. All right, and if we would have written the docs, we would have had written up the whole description about this. but because we went and used it a bunch before we even worried about writing the docs or releasing to users, at least we saved all that effort. Okay. So where in the, I have tests right now about selector. Here it is. Requires a tag selector on the component. I want to change this test up. So instead, now we're going to say it uses the component's selector if it is a tag name, and maybe as a separate test the other whoops. It uses an auto-generated. It can handle components that don't, whose selectors are not tag names. And I suppose again also, so we'll have 3 tests for one that's a tag name, one that is not a tag name, and one that's just not even provided. So also it can handle components that don't have a selector. Okay. That's this one. And it's not going to throw an error anymore, but this is not a tag name. That's not a tag name. And then we'll do one that does have a tag name, which is going to be similar. Selector S tag name. And this is the tag name component. Oh, whoops. Now, how do we write these tests? I guess these ones are sort of done. I don't think I'm going to care what the tag name actually is in the test. I'm not going to, yeah, but here I want to write that it's used. All right, so we want these basically not to throw error. Or maybe we should do more than just that. Maybe we should make sure that just put a component on the screen and show like some text is being rendered from it. That should be enough. So like template text, template text. So let's do run that and expect the fixture native element text content to include to contain template text. Ooh, if I make that a little shorter, it'll be able to stand one line. The template is 1 character shorter enough. Hey, Yay! Great. And I want it to be similar for all of these. And then oh yeah, okay. Fair enough, fair enough. And this will be what? I'm just going to eliminate this, and then I don't have to worry about it. I'm comfortable with that. Okay. Cool. Uses the component selector if it is a tag name. Right, so we haven't really written this test well yet. So let's do that. And for that, can we somehow get a nice handy reference? I can tell you what we can do. I think we can do the debug element and do a query for by directive for the tag name component. And then I assume we have access on this debug element to the tag name. Name? Let's just see what name is. And that would be s tag name. I'm not sure if that's the right thing, but so let's see. Right now we'll expect this one to pass if this works, and these two to fail because we have to go actually write the production code to handle it. Let's see. We're going to need ng dev tests running. How many failures do we have? Ooh! More than I realized. Okay. It looks like these ones for test call are times where earlier we updated those tests to use the new component context and didn't add the selector. Oops. Because we apparently never ran and saw that they failed. However, these are the two from this spec that failed, just as we thought. Okay, so we've got red, let's turn it green. We want component context next is what we need. That's the production code. And down, where is it? Have a selector. Okay. Great. So instead of throwing asserting that it's a valid selector with a message, right? Yeah. Oh, this. Can we do the override, the testbed override, before we declare the component? Let's find out. So if it's not a valid selector, we want to just set it ourselves to like a default. And maybe let's prefix it with slibs, just in case the user has something with that name. They certainly shouldn't have one with this name. And then we'll do testbed.override the component to set the selector to what we just defined. I don't know. Maybe that'll work, maybe it won't. Oh, it's a thing of beauty. Oh, that's cool. That is super cool because we just made our helper there's even less boilerplate. We're making it even better. So in this before and after, we can get rid of the thing that I didn't even put in this. So we helped achieve the goal. I wonder if that's completely achieved now. That's great. So we took, this is how some tests I was writing had to be written with the old component context, that many lines, and now this is how they can be written with the new version. Makes me happy to see that. Okay, so now we can go look at all of our Git changes and remove the ones that we just changed to have a selector. And first, let's go in here. Before we even do that, let's do the ones just in this. In this particular test. Right, we still need it on these because that's the whole point of that test. But we can remove it. This is awesome. We don't need to make up names for things that we don't even care about in the test. It makes this even more succinct and easy for someone coming to this later to read. Loving it. I might be deleting more of these than I really need to. That one even gets to be on one line now. But the test failures will tell me that. That's great. So I'm going to make a commit with just that change for our two files, and then we'll go back and update all of the tests we were rewriting and continue there. So this is, the new feature is component context next no longer requires a selector. Good, and we're going to do, like I said, just... Oh, and we can remove it from our to-do list. Yes. We'll still make a migration guide, but we don't need to call that out. This is in ngDev, in the test context. Okay, yeah, this one. This one. Look, it was even less, fewer lines of code to support automatic selectors. And this we're going to do with the next commit, which We'll update all the tests everywhere. Awesome. So now let's go through our changed files. Oh, and this I need to set up for streaming too. There we go. Right about there and there. Find all of our changes. Yeah. We don't need, where'd that selector go? Oh, let's just do this. Selector. Any changed lines where we added a selector are no longer needed. I'm surprised that even has a selector. Oh, because this was already in a previous commit using the new one, and we had in the previous commit added the unnecessary selector. Ha. Here's one I think we just added. Yeah. Oh, no. This one, okay, yep, that one is actually used from here. This one is unneeded, though. Get that back on one line. Nice. Okay, and this one is actually used, I think, in a template? Or maybe not. Whoa. S color text. Yeah, it's used in a template here, so that one is actually necessary. Great. This one, not needed. The test component must have that. Okay, that one is needed. Yeah. I think we could remove this one. Even though we didn't add it, why did that even have a selector? Doesn't show up anywhere else in the file. Nice. Okay. Let's make sure these tests pass and that the ones that we, what was that, an ng core pass, and then we should be good to continue. Nice. Stop that, go to ng core. Ooh. Ah, I know the problem. We made that change, but we did not get that into the compiled version. ng dev build. And this probably needs to be restarted. Okay, And these were the two tests I was thinking, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what's going on. Okay, back to where we left off. But with a newer, better helper, I like to switch from standing to sitting. I've had back problems on and off for most of my adult life, and switching to a standing desk really helped. And I've heard, and it seems to be true for me too, that switching back and forth, stand for a while, sit for a while, stand for a while, sit for a while, that's the best option. Provides help for two-way binding. Oh, and which file? Form controls superclass spec. Okay, let's get rid of a whole bunch of this stuff. What is going on in this test? We're simply just initializing it with the value 15 and expecting it to be 15. So what did we do? How did we break that setup code? So that's the input to test component. So that value should be 15, which then should bind through this ng model. Oh, ng model. I bet. Oh no, we're importing forms module. That was my first guess, that we lost this somewhere in the transition. So ng model should be available. Let's see what happens if it's not. I just want to sort of do a little troubleshooting here. Do we get the same error, or does it give us a different problem? No, it's the same error. Because it kind of seems like ng model is not working. Yeah, that's in that Angular Forms module. Just that's what I thought I remembered. Hmm. Let's see if it's help for two-way binding. First of all, let's run the one test. Learn our lesson from earlier. And make sure expect ctx dot fixture dot component instance dot value to be 15. Because that's what should be. So our wrapper should get the value, then the test component should get the value. There we go. I want to see everything. This should be the test component. This should be our dynamic wrapper, I think. Let's debug in here. Oh, oops, I want the spec for this. Oh. error somewhere and this is not rebuilding. Line 78. I get an error here, but not in my editor? That's strange. Does that trick still work in TypeScript? No. Oh, that's just TSLint. Okay. Object is of type unknown. That's not an error, that's just a statement of fact. Of course it is. Are you saying I'm not allowed to do this to it because it's of type unknown? Oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. I'm just trying to do some debugging here. Fine. I'll do it myself in the console. Okay, so component, let's see, ctx.fixture component instance is a wrapper, and it does have the value 15. But then .get component instance still has the value 0. Well, that's not what we want. We have our component under test. Which doesn't have any inputs listed. That would do it. That would do it. Ah, okay. We didn't list this as an input because we weren't, okay. The way this test was written in the old style, we were manually setting, let me show you here. When we were, okay, so this should go in the upgrade guide. Any inputs you pass in have to actually be inputs now. You can't just set anything you want, and that's great because that is going to better simulate what happens in reality, right? If I wrote this test, if this was a real component and I forgot to add input right there and I wrote a test for it and it all worked, you know, I might just think that I'm good to go, not even realizing that I forgot to put that there. So we pass that in. Do we also set should disable anywhere? Where does this come from? No, that's triggered by like clicking a button or something. Oh, no, we do set it as an input there. We could, okay, so first of all, that should be in the migration guide. We could write a little nice error message for that to help users track down that problem. Because we already have a list of all the input names that we use to build our dynamic wrapper component. All variables set. Oh, first of all, renamed input to inputs. And then all variables set via inputs must be Angular, Angular inputs. I'll figure out the better wording later. Great. And then let's also write it to do. We don't have to do it now because it's not going to cause us to come back and rewrite anything in our tests, but we could throw a nice an error with a helpful message when trying to set an input that is not an Angular input. Okay, awesome. Okay, and then did this fix our test? Sure enough. Great. And then provides help for disabled. What's going on with that? Ah, that was the same thing. Input. Awesome. Okay, we can move on. I'll keep updating more tests to the new coolness. So instead of this, it's that. And we do have a subject here, so we should actually keep this as a subclass. Here we can do test component instead of that. We don't have to pass it through here anymore. And I bet you we're going to have to add an input. Oh no, nope. And what's this problem? Property run does not exist on, oh. Why doesn't property run exist? Is this not imported properly? Yeah, it's there. Oh, right. That's the one I wanted. Okay, there we go. What is this thing? It is a test component context, which is one of these, which extends component context next. And if we go look at this, it should certainly have a run method. What do you think is on this thing? A run method. What? Property run? Is something wrong with my editor? Am I getting that same message here? Let me restart this. You're kidding me. Something's out of sync with WebStorm. It doesn't realize. Well, I'm going to have to restart WebStorm, I guess. I can't work like this. We'll restart ngDev when we get back. Oh, yeah, this one. Here we go. Okay. ng core test we were running, I believe. All right. Sorry about that. That's annoying. So this guy now just has a new name. Ah, so that should be in the upgrade guide. Change ctx.fixture.component instance to this. Great. And let's see if those tests pass. Nice. Oh, we lost our search when we had to restart WebStorm. So we want to search everywhere for component context, where that's the full word. And we've already made some progress on this. Yep. ngcore.spec. So I guess this is the next one. I don't really know where this is in the integration. Oh, we have just some big integration test that uses a bunch of these. Okay, fine, that's cool. So let's find any place that's currently using component context as a full word and replace it with component context next. Great. And oops. Just go through the motions here for a minute. Yes, this is inputs. That's already in the upgrade guide. This is already in the upgrade guide. Okay, and this was the integration test over in this integration project. Looks like we're real close. Uh-oh. Oh, I bet you it's that input thing again. Knows where to find angular forms. Oh. ngCore. knows where to find. Oh, I just spelled wrong. Angular forms. There we go. Wow. That is quite a test I wrote. Or I've actually just copied in here. So the string input where are you? CTX is defined. Oh, where is it defined? Here, which is a test component, which needs this to be an input. We're going to have to make that change in the file that we copied this from as well. And knows where to find microdash. I bet you we're going to have to change that one to be an input. Oh yes, we did that. I recognize this test. Oh, we also had a different test where, well, I think we ended up in the other file doing both of them. Okay, lovely. Now we're in, oh, we're back to ngCore. Okay, I thought that might go in order, but it did not. Okay, we have one last, I think this is the last one. Don't need that anymore. We remember that this needs to become an input. And what is going on all down here? Input becomes inputs, plural. Oh, date should disable. These all need to be inputs. And then any place we had that. We switch to that. Okay. ngCore, ngCore, the tests are running. Oh, and we have problems. The date is undefined. It's trying to do an ISO string of some date somewhere. It does not emit after incoming change. Let's do just that test. Which is here. And cannot read property to ISO string. Where's that coming from? Spec line 75, and now we're back in this problem where if I try and click in the stack trace, it doesn't open in Chrome. The path here is crazy. The spec line 75, okay, the spec line 75 is coming from our fake date component we created. Is Let's set a breakpoint there and see where that's coming from, that undefined line. Oh, this is wrapped form control superclass spec line 75. And the value is undefined. On change, that's coming from Angular itself. It's not until we get all the way down here. This is just coming from a flush microtasks. Let's make sure. I just don't remember if I checked that this was passing before we made any changes, or if on our branch somehow that got messed up in some previous commit. No. Only the last one failed. That was today. And it was linting. All the tests passed. Okay. Well, it was working earlier today. So we broke it during this streaming session, I think. Okay, let's go understand that what's going on in that test better. Where's our actual spec? Here. During initialization, it looks like. Oh, at the end of the test? This is interesting. Okay, let's go to our spec and see if it's at the beginning or end or what of the actual test. It must be the beginning because we didn't hit our other breakpoints. All right, like we'll hit our breakpoint there, but not the one inside. So it's during initialization of the component, which makes sense. Oh, here it thinks null happens during initialization, but now we're initializing it as undefined. Why did that change? I bet. Let's see, which component is it? It's the date. The date component. And where do we use that thing? Not directly. So sDate component has to be used somewhere, right? And how is it used? It's in our test component down at the end. This default value? Maybe this default value, maybe we changed our behavior because we have that wrapper component. I bet you this is it. Because we have that wrapper component, it's binding into this instead of leaving that off of the template. It's now binding to this automatically. That's how the wrapper component works. And so, yeah, we can set this default, but then the wrapper component is just going to bind undefined to it because in this init that we pass in here, well, which test is it? does not emit after incoming change. We're not passing in a date there, and so that implicitly becomes undefined. That's... Wow, on the last test this comes up, and that may be problematic. That may actually be... We need to be able to allow our users to test default values for their inputs. We could pass into the new component context either the inputs to bind to or the inputs not to bind to. We could still use our automatic detection. We could still use our automatic detection by default, but then they could pass in a list of ones to either opt in or opt out of. It's all very interesting. I don't love it. I wish I could think of another way. That's why I'm just sitting here in silence. I don't love the idea. I think the normal case is to want it to all be done for you automatically. You don't want to have to specify the inputs that are available when you call, the ones that would be available to use here. You don't want to have to specify that, but it's a trade-off that we have to, I think we have to deal with. I don't see a way to like, oh, okay. I was thinking of this. I didn't like it as much because I was thinking of passing this list of things to skip binding to as being in like the, I don't know, the setup. We could do it like here, specific to this individual test. Can we? Could we do something like skip, ignore inputs, skip inputs, use do not bind to date. Except I suppose it would be, which test were we in? Here. And then we could also, we could do however many we wanted. That's not terrible. I think that's not terrible. then there would definitely need to be a note about that in the migration guide. Components with default values for inputs will need to use whatever we come up with. Do not bind to. So by default, it's going to bind the value undefined to everything. And then if you pass in this, I could skip them. You know, I'm even questioning that. Why would we want to bind in the value undefined by default? That might not even be a legal value, but I don't know that we have a way to enforce that with like typing or anything like that. Okay, I'm going to leave this as a future change. I'm not going to tackle that right now. I think we can still get into a really good place without this new feature. So I'm going to add that to the to-do list. Add a new feature to skip binding to specific inputs or something like that. Which means this file is not ready to migrate to the new version yet. So let's just, where is it? Roll that back. And I think that should be the last one. Component context. Yep. And that was our last one. Exciting. Okay, so let's make sure our tests are all passing again. Well, that's the opposite of all passing. What have I done? What? Some sort of setup thing that's in a before each of everything? What did I do? Oh, okay. Restarting Karma. Karma. All right. And let's just take a look. This commit should be a really cool one, making everything use the new one, the new helper. So let's go ahead and make the commit, and then I don't know, I think I want to go look at the, I think in Git, maybe if you look at a specific commit, does it show you the lines added and removed? I just want to see. So migrate most existing tests to component context next. I still want to skim all of my changes to make sure there's not something like a note I left myself to get back to later, or oh yeah, nice to remove all those selectors, or you know, something jumps out at me like, oh yeah, I should do that before I actually commit. This I had to add, but that actually feels better. Like we were treating them as inputs, but they weren't marked as inputs, and so I still take that as an improvement. Not much improved there because there was just the one subclass up top, but lots of items in our to-do list. Oh, and that was it. Okay. Let's commit and push that up to GitHub. And then, is there some fancy thing to go see this on GitHub? Open in GitHub. That's the first time I've used that. Okay, well, not a huge change in the number of lines. It did drop a bit. What is that, 20 lines? That's something. Oh, which is like 30 lines because we have all of this that we added. Okay, we dropped 30 lines. That's cool. Including, yeah, like all this. Was just messy. Great. I'm happy. I'm really happy. It's always a longer road than I think it should be, or than I anticipate to get some new feature out like this. Working really carefully, which I like to have the end product of something that I've done very carefully and designed well and thought through. Done every detail. But yeah, it's an investment. Hopefully, this will be used. I'm going to use it. Maybe you'll start using it, and we'll end up, saving people time, giving them a better experience writing their Angular component tests. So I'm going to put links, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to put links in the description below to all the code we wrote, to this library. And if you're watching on Twitch, thanks for being with me live. Check my schedule. I'm currently streaming on Tuesday evenings for sure, and then other times randomly. But I'll keep my schedule up to date in the Twitch channel. Yeah, I hope this was interesting. Appreciate everyone bearing with me for 2 hours and 40 minutes for this. Have a great day and happy coding.